Hey everybody, hi, hello, welcome back to Phil Pods with Lola. That's me, I'm Lola. It's the fake podcast format, none of the podcast jargon, all of the deep introspective conversation. Thanks for being here. So this week I want to talk about timing and choices, because at the end of the day, everything boils down to timing and to choices that we make. One feeds off the other, kind of begets the other. I've been following, as a lot of the country has been, the Gaby Petito situation, the case, the developing situation. We are all part of each other, whether we realize it or not. And sometimes we only really know that we're all connected when we enact change for other people. This case has gripped the nation, as they say. As far as my own theories about what happened, I won't get into that simply because if you go to most of the coverage that there is, you can see my comments that I've left, and so you can kind of make a summation about how I feel about it. And I hope that justice is swift. I hope that the internet continues to be a useful tool in the situation. So rather than talk about kind of speculating on everything as most people are, I wanted to talk about the reasoning and maybe the bigger picture, that spiritually higher scope of things happening of this magnitude, a higher, further reaching reason why things like this happen in general. I'm a true crime enthusiast type of person. I used to read Patricia Cornwell novels all the time, watched Forensic Files, Cold Case Files. I used to be a lot more into it, but I still really enjoy it. And I think it goes back into my main theme for today, choices and timing. We jump into a timeline of already in progress choices and already in progress timing that we then try to make sense of. We then try to fill in the gaps and try to understand exactly where someone was or what it all means. No one can ever fully really do that. You weren't there at the time. You weren't, to be a fly on the wall in some situations, but maybe that's not what we're supposed to be doing. The people that end up being very instrumental in our lives in one way or the other, in either a positive light or a negative light, that's all timing, right? In my own life, as with everyone else's life, it boils down to, why did I choose this and not that? Why at the moment when I could have really done something to better my life situation, I chose something to make it worse? We intend for things to be in our own scope of control, right? So we'll leave the house at 7:45 because we have to be somewhere at 8:10 or whatever. But if something goes wrong in either direction, 10 minutes this way or 10 minutes this way, we get a whole different scope of experiences. We get a whole different rendezvous point with everything that day. Although I would like to be able to control that stuff sometimes, I am certainly not in control of it, and neither is anyone else, except for the choices that we make around the timing. Situations that are deemed helpless or hopeless or crippling or rife with struggle or sorrow, it's really hard to make sense of what is happening at the time. It's hard to understand the bigger picture. So a good example of timing working in someone's favor, I'll use the Petito case as a reference. If that fellow YouTube family that was doing a cross-country trek, if they hadn't passed by Gabby and Brian's van, was at the time it was parked there, we probably would have never found Gabby, or at least a lot later than, probably never though, considering the elements and stuff. So that timing was completely divine, and who knows why that timeline worked out. Whereas what happened with the police intervention? Why couldn't, in the same perfect timing, same fated timing, why couldn't a patrol car have driven by right as Brian slapped her or hit her as he allegedly did, according to the 911 calls? So why didn't that happen, in effect changing the line of questioning and the line of action that was then carried out the rest of that police interaction? Why did the timing work so well after and the timing work so horribly before? You have to wonder why that is, and you can go crazy trying to figure out why if you're not careful. Again, it's because there are some other things going on. There's a bigger picture, there's a different scope than we can really comprehend. The difference between a missed train. You're running down the tracks trying to catch the train, and it just evades you, and then on a different timeline, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, a minute difference, and you would have made that train, and it would just keep on going. It's a huge difference. It's down 2 seconds or minutes or one thought, and it can completely change the course of your day, the course of your life. Throughout this coverage of the Petito case, I've been thinking about my own timeline and my own what would have happened if kind of scenarios. If I had left at the age of 14 and traveled to LA and pursued the career that I wanted at that time in my life, would I have reached my goal? Would I be a fixture in Hollywood now with this, big celebrated career? Would I have fallen in with abusive people and become a statistic myself? If I had stayed in my hometown, if I had played it either a lot safer or if I had played it a lot more dangerously, how would my life have changed? And so then it begs the question, okay, so if I'm not really in control at that time, if what I want and what I design has no real, I'm not really in control of that, and at crucial times or important times, I'm not the one that gets to decide things, then what's the point? And it feels like you're cheated. It feels like you have no real power in your own life. But I do know that there is an element of choose your own adventure. For anybody who's unfamiliar with that term, there was a series of books, you can still find them. As you read the book, you get to choose how the story goes. You definitely still have to get to, from page 20 to page 56, because on page 56, there is something that happens that has to happen in order for the rest of the story to pan out. So I do believe that in our own lives, you can go from page 20 to page 56 however you want to. So within that thought, within that analogy, we have free will. We have always had free will. We will always have free will, even in the most stringent control structures that that exist on this earth, in relationships, in society, whatever. We still have free will, no matter how much time and effort and energy and money is spent trying to control or sway or influence our free will. It is still up to us. It is still completely ours to do with what we want to. That's why, for me, I harp on about clarity and knowing yourself and trusting your instincts so much. If you are aware of yourself, if you are in tune with yourself, you will receive guidance that will steer you to page 56 in the best way possible. It doesn't mean that if you don't have that connection, your life is less meaningful or worse off. No. In some cases, yes, it can equate to a scenario or a happenstance or something evolving that is viewed as tragic or senseless or whatever. But again, if we're just jumping into someone's choices and timeline, things do look senseless. Things do look nuts. Things do look maddeningly out of our control or out of that person's control. If you think about it, every step of the way is a choice. If the question is between pleasing others, feeling comfortable, conforming to societal norms, or our own health and our own well-being, it would be nuts to continuously choose something that only benefits other people. And when you think about it in that way, I'm going to reference the Petito case again, because again, like I said, I've been musing on this since I started following the case last week. If you think about it in Gaby Petito's case, she was there with police officers that could have very much protected her. I was talking to my dad, and he said what she could have done if they were not on her side and didn't understand is she could have gave a very brief, hey, police officer, I am scared for my well-being. I've been in this abusive relationship for a while. I feel like it's getting to a culmination point, and tried to grab their firearm or just said, hey, I have to do something severe so that you guys have to take me in. Anything like that. She might still be alive. If she had chosen at that time, at that important juncture, if she had chosen to break that abuse cycle, if it was in her to do that at that time, she might still be alive. In no way would I victim shame or victim blame, but in order to fully move on past that type of interaction, I think you really, knowing from my own experience, you have to own your part of it. It's not just one person controlling everything you do. You still have free will. Yes, there's manipulation. Yes, there's abuse. Yes, there's unspeakable, gnarly things. But you are the only person that can save yourself in that situation. If Gaby wasn't there yet, if she didn't quite understand that, if she wasn't quite to that level, to that timeline, to that choice, if she wasn't quite there yet, she wasn't quite there yet. Even though now, after her transition to the non-physical, is what I like to call it, whatever term you choose to use, because now her choice was to choose what she chose all the way along, and her timing was the way that it was. Now, after her death and her absence, can start so many dialogues about things that she raised awareness for. And that's really amazing. If you are on your right path, if you're making the choices that make sense for you, that are the best choices you can make at the time, and something still goes horribly wrong, that means that you are actually serving a bigger picture, and that you are, in a way, I don't like the term sacrificial lamb, because again, that implies that you had no choice. She had a choice all along. We all have choices all along, every day, to either continue a certain pattern or to break that pattern and to try something else. Someone that takes one for the team so that the rest of us can look at it and go, wow, that's what's possible. That's what's at stake. That's what's on the table. And I feel like there are so many people that are in that position that never get the recognition for that. So if you are on your own path, you're the right path, you're making choices that are the best for you in the moment, which is all we can do. That's all any of us can do, is try to make the best possible choice for ourselves in the moment and see what happens. If you're doing that and something still goes quote unquote horribly wrong, or you feel like you made a hard right and you're now completely fucked over, then that means there is a bigger picture going on. Trusting that, and trusting that it's leading you somewhere that is really important. It's one of the hardest skills to really hone, in my opinion. Once you do, you anguish far less, and you are able to understand and not grieve so hard for other people in their path, other people in their timeline, other people in their choices. There's a pretty severe thunderstorm happening, so I'm sorry if you hear any type of rain or thunder or anything as we're doing this. But anyway, you can take a few steps back once you figure out how to understand the divine timing choices. All of that, all of those things are a mosaic of where you're headed in your life, instead of these really kind of hyper-focused importances, if that makes sense. It's more of a loose kind of ever-evolving, ever-changing kind of beautiful symphony, that your choices and timing and your choices and timing and timing and your choices and all of that, it's all just kind of rolling around together and resulting in outcomes that will benefit you, whether you see that possibility, whether you see the benefit now or later or whatever. In order to be able to trust that, you have to understand that, if that makes sense. If you don't, and it just feels like the fickle finger of fate is just jabbing you in the ass, and there's some horrible thing that you just had no part in it happening, or it evolving that way, then yeah, it'll kick your butt. You won't be able to gain anything from any of the quote unquote negative or horrible or tragic or traumatic experiences. You won't be able to move past those. You'll stay in that same loop. What is the point if we have to ultimately surrender our power, our idea, our whatever it is for our lives? Like, what is the point? If you can find a way to picture a scenario a different way, if you can find a way to pull back and go, wait a minute, even though this is something that I'm not comfortable with, even though it's something that I wish would have happened differently, that's not my place. It's not my place to assert myself in anyone's timeline, to comment or judge anyone's choices, really, because Like I said, you're just popping on into their timeline, taking a peek and thinking you know exactly what's happening. I would hope that in some way that there is clarity. There is clarity. There's an idea that because you are here at this moment in time, with this thought in your head, with this feeling in your heart, that is not for no reason. And that even if other people can't understand that, if it disturbs other people, if it shakes them up, if it makes them question their own situation, their own reality, maybe that's why it's happening. That's hard to take, it's hard to stomach, and it's hard to make peace with. 100%. But if you can wrap your brain around it and find a way to be okay with it, then you will find a way to glean insight into maybe why it's happening. Gaby Petito in Death has shown a big spotlight on a lot of things that in the long run will help so many other women in her shoes, even though it's not the outcome that anyone wants to hear. Certainly not her family, not her parents, not anyone who can identify with her in her situation. Nobody wants to hear that was the outcome. But because that is the outcome and there's nothing we can do about that, our choice now, our timeline now, our timing now is up to, in light of those things, what do we do now? Is it tragic and unsettling and chilling? Yes. I am in no way saying that any of these events are good, or that if I had the ability to snap my fingers and change all of the abuse that has ever happened from the beginning of time and to prevent it from happening again in a heartbeat, that I wouldn't do that. In no way. I long for a day when we don't have to deal with this kind of stuff, but I think it'll always be here. And how we deal with it and how we move forward is maybe the lasting legacy that Gaby has left behind for us. The real true impact of her being on our radar as a society at all. Because to be honest with you, I saw a statistic that there were 710 missing people in the same area that she was missing. There was 710 people of color, women and children, over the last 10 years. Why is this the only case that we've heard about? I believe there's a term for it, the missing white woman syndrome, where just because she is socially acceptable physically and young and has her whole life ahead of her, we're paying attention to it, we're preoccupied with it, we're obsessed with it. But if it were someone that was an indigenous person, was less on the radar, wasn't on social media or whatever, maybe that person would never be spoken of. Is that fair? Is that something that makes sense? No. And Gaby is another very important perspective on that. She's also shining a big old spotlight on how domestic violence is treated, the stigma that is involved with that, and the way that situations like that are handled within law enforcement and within our society in general. If you watch the body cam footage, you can see she is distraught. She is distraught. She is telegraphing with her eyes, with her whole spirit, please help me. Please help me. But she didn't say it out loud. She didn't say it. She didn't feel comfortable enough to say it. She didn't want to rock the boat. She didn't want to accrue more damage and more, complication for herself later down the road, because if he ever found out what she said, if they told him, but you can see it on her face, you can see her kind of, please, please, please help me, please, please, please help me, but she didn't say it out loud. Why are we in a society where we're not teaching our human beings to be in tune with themselves, to take care of themselves first, and at the first red flag of abuse, you get the fuck out? She's another way of looking at that type of scenario and going, yeah, we got to do better for each other, for women, for, little people as they're coming up. We need to create environments where that's totally the norm, not the exception, not something brave. And she's helping people to understand that, I think, if we choose to. And at the very, very least, if in no other way is this story food for thought, the way that we perceive people online, the way that we package ourselves online, the way the nice glossy varnish that's all over every little crack of our lives, that, we don't want people to really see the dark, seedy underbelly. Maybe the dark, seedy underbelly is what people should know first and foremost. I am not blaming Gaby for her choices. I'm saying this is what she chose in light of the climate and the situation surrounding her in her life. It's a wonderful thing to look at those types of things and try to make headway. Try to let this be not all for nothing. At the end of the day, the more we are able to look at a situation and really evaluate what's happening and what the real story is, that is the only way that we can move forward. And although we are all 100% allowed to feel our feelings and have our own opinions, have our own feelings and thoughts on things, at the same time, none of us are able to move forward and to have new ideas about things if we keep going in the same direction all the time. I am in no way comparing myself to anyone that I've mentioned today, to Gaby and her situation or anything like that. I can only speak from my perspective, and so in my own scenario, all of the choices that I have made that were painful at the time, that really scared me, led me down a deeper, more important path. There was a benefit to the people that loved me. There's a benefit to people who benefit from me being on this earth. And there was certainly a time for me to reflect on it and to make sure that I was then making steps after that choice to be better. If you can trust that when things go horribly wrong and they take a hard right and they, things just look really bleak and sad and senseless, just try to think about it through the grand scheme of things lens. Try to think about it, take a couple steps back and think about it from an objective point of view, an objective standpoint. What is the situation trying to tell me? What is the situation trying to teach me? Pinpoint what it is that's being taught to you. I guarantee you will find a way out of it that will then give you a new skill, a new leash on life, a new something. It will aid you in some way, and it will help others as well. It will benefit others. I headed to Hollywood and had a laser beam focus on being a film actor. I ended up being a mom. And so, of course, that I had my what the fuck was I thinking moments. I still have them from time to time. We are imperfect humans. We are imperfect beings. But I do know that through that situation, through all the pain and anguish that I had to let go of, when I finally looked at what I did have and went, wow, I have some amazing, amazing little beings that now I can give back with. I can teach them all the things that I wish I had. I can be that person for them. So instead of me going into a cesspool that has revealed itself to be a cesspool, to a very toxic, negative, deeply ingrained, instead of deep diving into the Hollywood scenario, which I do believe I would have been ripped to shreds at some point by the type of people, by, whatever it was, I would have self-destructed. I know that now. At the time, I felt like a failure. But now that I've had some clarity, now that time has passed, now that I have a timeline that really does work for me, that I've carved out, that I've used those lessons and kind of built something different, I'm able to see that now. I'm able to go, yeah, I really got done a solid. I really avoided a very untimely demise because I chose the scary thing. Like I said, I'm in no way judging anybody's choices or it's so easy to jump in. Like I said, just take a peek at someone's choices or whatever and think we know everything about it. There's no way we could possibly. But I do know that I encourage everybody to take a look and see what is being presented to you. We all have a crucial crossroads in our life that we can either keep going in the same direction, or we can go a different direction and have new adventures. And it's powerful. Whatever we choose is powerful. I continue to hone my acceptance and hone my skills at accepting things that go horribly wrong and going, okay, well, obviously that is for a reason. It's for a reason. And when I'm confronted with a decision, I go, how do I feel about that? Instead of just doing what other people tell me, doing what I've done in the past, I've learned now to go, wait, what do I need to do for myself? Not for them, not for society at large necessarily, but because I'm making choices for myself, I end up contributing in the long run. I now make choices based from more of a healed place in congruence with the timing that I know is working with me. I know it's working with me if I let it. Even if it shakes other people up and it challenges where they're at, even if my truth reflects their lie, which happens a lot. Because I choose to grab something that scares me and just be like, no, you're not going to scare me. You're not going to push me around, People that haven't learned how to do that yet are upset at me when I do it. They have a lot of negative opinions. And you'll get that, if you start making choices that are based on what's best for you. But it's okay. Just recognize that that's them and that's their situation. It has nothing to do with you. Say thank you for your opinion and move on. As I've said so many times before, I don't know what the outcome will be for any choice that I've made recently, or I don't know what the outcome will be in the Petito case. I send love and healing and swift justice, whatever that means, however that means the most impactful thing for Gaby's family, for Brian's family, because he's certainly a troubled individual himself. Even though you're not supposed to have sympathy for people who do unspeakable crimes, allegedly, or are an abusive person, they learned it from somewhere. They learned how to be an abuser and they learned how to take the abuse. So just remember that. Remember that even though it looks like, as you just pop into the timeline, that you have it all figured out, you probably won't ever. But you can learn from it. You can take from it the wisdom and the lesson that is being presented to you. And in that way, that's the legacy that lives on. Any senseless crime, anytime someone loses their life, it doesn't have to be in vain. We can all make choices after that support what could have happened for that person to not have died. If you are in an abusive situation yourself, I encourage you to choose yourself. Choose you, choose you, choose you. Find a way to get away. If there is anything that clicks on your radar and says, wait a minute, that's not good, don't ignore that for any reason. Find a way. If you have to change your residence, move to another place, if you have to change your number, if you have to leave town for a while, whatever it is, find a way to get away from that. Either it's slow suicide or it can turn into something much, much harsher than that. Find a way to get away, no matter monetarily, societally, like whatever anyone's going to say about it, they're going to say about it anyway. Just take care of yourself. And for those people that are pitying, shaming, judging anyone in an abusive situation, you have absolutely no idea until you're there yourself. If you've never been there yourself, there's no way you could know what that's like. If you yourself can't be a positive voice in that type of situation, keep it to yourself. Try to educate yourself. Try to ask questions of someone. Don't feel obligated to add insult to injury to someone's situation by thinking you know, because you don't. Maybe in the future, if you're able to move past that, you can help someone in a situation that really needs your help in the future. I would say the ultimate lesson learning, the ultimate act of allyship for someone that you can do is to prevent it from happening again, to stop it in its tracks as it's happening. But at the same time, if not, that's okay too. You will get to page 56, one way or the other. You will be impactful one way or the other. Your story will be told, will be remembered one way or the other. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending time with me. If this resonated with you, feel free to share, like, subscribe, hit the notificationer. I'll be back again with another one very soon. Until then, have a good week. I'll speak to you soon.